Today, we're talking some rebuilding trade targets. You should be going after two. These guys are going to be a little more impactful for you. So we're talking about the top 150 players on Keep Trade Cut. Sounds fun, doesn't it?
It does. That's a good, relevant players. Though I think I might have picked somebody outside of the 150, but that's okay.
How dare you? Well, then why don't we get started? Who's your first player?
Well, this guy's within the 150, and it's Polk.
Okay.
I think he's one of the best wide receivers at value of this rookie class. He's already emerging as Drake May's wide receiver 1 and starting to push Demario Douglas for that role. We've seen him in the preseason. He's looked really good. He looked really good in training camp as well. I know, we haven't actually seen him on an NFL field against NFL starters yet, but 52 preseason routes, 34 of 38 of Drake May's dropbacks he ran a route on, had 9 targets over that time. And in the last game against the Commanders, had 2 catches for 33 yards. But, in the first quarter when they were playing, he looked really good. He got open. He had just about 2 yards per route run in that half. Small sample size, but I've really liked what I've seen from Polk. I think this is a guy that, in an offense where they really need a wide receiver 1, as good as Demario Douglas is and as much as I like him, I think Polk has more of the body and the physicality to be that guy for the Patriots. And whether it's Drake May or Jacoby Brissett, either one of those guys can support Polk as a wide receiver for fantasy football. I don't know if he'll be a wide receiver 2 or better this year. I'm not expecting that, mostly because I don't think the Patriots offense is going to be that great. But I do think Polk could be like a top 36, top 40 wide receiver, which is a pretty good year, rookie year on a team like the New England Patriots for a wide receiver. And then as Drake May improves, Polk could go and improve along with him in fantasy football. I think this guy that could have multiple top 24 seasons moving on. I don't know if he'll have any top 12 seasons, but I think this is a guy is going to really fit into that 12 to 25 range or something like that, 15 to 30 or somewhere around there. And that's going to be a really good piece for your team that you can acquire right now for relatively cheap, a little expensive because, people are trying to catch on. He was a second-round pick, though. If you drafted him, you might have drafted him in the first part of the second. You might have drafted him in the back half of the second. He was kind of going all over the place depending on when you drafted. I'm excited about Polk. He's going to be good this year, but this is a guy you're getting is going to improve with your team. And when he's ready to, produce in a year or two, that's when your team's going to be ready to produce. And maybe at that point, he's just sitting in your flex spot and you're getting a solid, 13 points a game out of him at your flex spot. That'll be a really nice spot to be. So cost-wise, looking at other players, especially the wide receivers that his cost is around, Calvin Ridley, you get much, much younger with Polk there. Josh Downs, if you think that the wide receiver room in Indianapolis is a little bit too crowded. And then some other wide receivers, Xavier Legette, if you want to try with a different rookie wide receiver, who I think has shown a little bit more to this short point. And then Jerry Jeudy, Troy Franklin. I don't know if you're going to be able to make those moves happen to go get Polk, but I did see them on Dynasty Daddy. So maybe if you have one of those players, you go talk to whoever has Polk. You offer one of those guys maybe a 3rd-round pick as well. Might be able to make it happen.
Yeah, I like that. And again, we're talking for rebuilding, so we're not expecting a ton right here, right off the rip. But hey, another guy that you could just throw in there. And look, he's not even 30 yet. He's a quarterback. This is Tampa Bay Buccaneers quarterback Baker Mayfield. Nate, he's 101. Keep Trade Cut. It's quarterback 24. So the fact that he's quarterback 24, despite the fact that he had both a resurgent and career year last year, in which he had 364 completions, 4,044 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 10 picks, and he's still considered a low-end quarterback too. Don't you think that's a little bit ridiculous?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, he finished as quarterback 10 last year.
He was quarterback 1.
Yeah, but he's being valued as a quarterback too. So the fact is he's one of the cheaper starting quarterbacks whose job security I don't worry about. Guys like Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, I feel like will be cheaper. Of course, Russell Wilson as well. But their job security is questionable, especially Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson. We really don't know. So Canales is gone, but in comes Liam Cohen, who did have a year as offensive coordinator under Sean McVay. We like that Sean McVay coaching tree, especially for quarterbacks. Got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Cade Otton, Rachaad White. They're all returning. So the starting lineup remains very stable. And by the way, did you know that he was #1 in deep ball attempts in 2023? He had 79. People don't think of Baker Mayfield as a big deep ball guy, but there he was airing it out. Like I said, again, feels like he's one of the cheaper starting caliber quarterbacks that you can still get. You get him for like a late first. I saw a trade Dak for Baker in a second. So kind of a step down, but you're still getting some. Hey, let's not forget you are rebuilding. I saw another one here's interesting. Justin Herbert for Baker Mayfield, Will Levis, and a 25-second. So that's one way to completely rebuild your quarterback room.
That's risky. You're either going to have two quarterbacks that work out, or you lost Justin Herbert and you don't have much to show for it.
Yeah, but hey, sometimes you got to swing for the fences, and that's one way that you could do it. So, Nate, what is another rebuilding target for you?
Yeah, another guy that I'm excited about is Jordan Addison. And earlier this offseason, when he was sitting at about, wide receiver 20 in rankings, I actually started to cool down on Addison. And as someone that was very excited about him when he was coming out of college, after he was drafted going into his rookie year, I started to cool down on him at wide receiver 20 prices. Of course, there were some off-the-field issues that happened again. Gosh, I talked about Rashee Rice last podcast, and I'm talking about Jordan Addison. I like the guys that it values. So he's now down to wide receiver 30. And I think that's pretty good value for a guy that finished as the wide receiver 23 last year in his rookie season. Now, I know that we don't have a lot of high expectations for the Vikings offense this year, especially now with J.J. McCarthy injured. Sam Darnold's in there. Justin Jefferson is obviously the number 1 target and the number 2 target before you even get to Jordan Addison. That's okay. You're rebuilding. You're going to get a really good wide receiver in his second year that is probably going to have a down year. And that's why I'm going to say that maybe now is not even the time to buy Jordan Addison. I don't think it's a bad time because his value has not gone back up to where it was at the end of the season yet. His value has dropped. So it's still a good time to buy Jordan Addison. But you might be able to even buy cheaper a couple weeks into the season. If the Vikings offense does not just hit the ground running, which I doubt it will, and the ball's going to Justin Jefferson, if Jordan Addison's struggling through the first couple of games and that offense is struggling, you can be able to get him probably pretty cheap. And this is still a very, very talented wide receiver who, if J.J. McCarthy comes back healthy next year and this offense starts to buzz, Jordan Addison is going to be a fantasy player that you want on your team. And, he's a really good route runner, was one of the best route runners coming out of college. I think he's one of the better wide receiver 2s in the league, talent-wise. According to Player Profiler, had 275 route wins last year. That was 7th among wide receivers. So this guy gets open a lot. Quarterbacks love that. Jordan Addison knows how to get open. He was pretty efficient last year, maybe too efficient. That's why some people are cooling down on him. So I don't expect those same kind of efficiencies. I do expect him to have a down year. But long term, I still think you're doing really well getting Jordan Addison on your team. So right now, value-wise, 2 seconds for Jordan Addison. Yeah. Terry McLaurin, Christian Watson, Cooper Kupp if you want to get younger. Or maybe if you want to get rid of an aging running back and go after Jordan Addison. Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift might get it done. He's just very accessible for a wide receiver that had a top 24 finish his rookie year. And just because the offense isn't good this year doesn't mean that it's not going to be good in the future. I think Jordan Addison's a great buy right now for a rebuilding team.
Do you think with Josh Jacobs and DeAndre Swift, you might be able to get a little bit more on top of Jordan Addison?
Possibly, because this is going to be a thing where if you're trading to a contending team, which you probably are if you're trading Josh Jacobs or DeAndre Swift away,
right? They're
looking at Jordan Addison, and they know he's not very useful for them this year. Like on Keep Trade Cut, everything is in a vacuum. You're not worried about your team's contending or rebuilding. So I think if Jordan Addison is on a contending team, you might be able to get something in addition to him. Maybe you get a 3rd round pick. If you trade him Josh Jacobs, you get Addison in the 3rd. I think that's possible.
All right, let's talk about my next rebuilding candidate, and that's Buffalo Bills wide receiver Khalil Shakir. It's 142 on Keep Trade Cut. Wide receiver 54. Hey, this is a depth chart where the wide receiver depth is a lot to be desired, much like the Steelers depth chart that we were talking about previously. We got Keon Coleman, who, has some talent, a little raw. He's a starter now, a 2nd-round draft pick. Curtis Samuel, who's just kind of had a career that maybe not panned out as much as some people thought it would. Still effective at times. And Khalil Shakir, those are your starting 3. So wide receiver 61 in 2023, 39 receptions, 611 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he only averaged 6.7 fantasy points per game. But Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, those guys are gone. So Khalil Shakir is the only relevant receiver that has rapport with Josh Allen. That's important, in my opinion. And let's not forget, he was a 4-star prospect going into college. He was also highly thought of coming into the draft by some. So we're hoping for that proverbial 3rd-year breakout. Yes, Nate was very high on him. And I think he can be a viable long-term starter for you. Maybe not a wide receiver 1, most likely not a wide receiver 1, but still a guy that you could plug into your lineup and feel okay about. And check this out, Nate, in 2023, his yak rec was 7.3. That average depth, the target was 8.6, and he did have a 50% catch percentage. So he shores that up a little bit. I think he's going to be good to go. I saw here you can get him for a 25-second. For whatever reason, I saw a ton of trades where people moving Devin Singletary in some capacity for Khalil Shakir. I don't know why. That just seemed to be the guy that they were targeting there. And here's an interesting one. Kenneth Walker III for Khalil Shakir and Zamir White.
I like that deal.
I like that deal a lot, to be honest with you. You're getting that wide receiver, you're getting Zamir White, who, you know what, if you're rebuilding but you start really tanking and Zamir White's doing good, you can go ahead and flip him right away too and keep going on for the future. So, Nate, who is your next rebuilding target?
Yep. So this is the guy that I totally missed the fact that we're supposed to do top 150 players on Keep Trade Cut.
It says it on there.
It does say it on there. I see it now. I did not see it earlier.
When I change it next time for top 500 players on Keep Trade Cut?
Well, you know what?
Bob
said limit of one quarterback and one tight end. You had the quarterback, but you foregoed the tight end. So I felt that it was my duty to find a tight end.
I did that for you.
Thank you. And
talk about Bryson Hopkins for me.
Oh my gosh, I was trying to find a good tight end to buy if you're rebuilding, and I didn't really have a great option. And I was going down the board. I was like, okay, who's a really good value for a rebuilding team that they can go get a tight end for cheap but has some upside. Guy that you like, Greg Dulcich for the Denver Broncos. You know, we got to take flyers on tight ends with upside. I love buying cheap tight ends right before the season starts. You know, those tight ends that are, well, Greg Dulcich is 222 overall, and he is tight end 24. But there is some value at the tight end 20-plus position, okay? Because we always have guys that break out. Like another guy I could mention here is maybe not even best for rebuilders, maybe for a contending team. Go put a waiver claim in or throw a fourth for Colby Parkinson. He's going to be the starting tight end for the LA Rams this season. In a week, he's going to be the starting tight end for the Rams.
Yeah, he is right now. Davis Allen's another guy that you can get really cheap as well if you don't believe in Parkinson.
Yeah. So, you know, these cheap tight ends, it's always a good buy, you know, because if they do anything, they're going to increase in value and you can flip them midseason. So Greg Dulcich, why I like him is, well, number one, the situation's pretty good. He's healthy again. Now, that's the biggest question mark with Greg Dulcich. Is he going to stay healthy? That was the big issue the first 2 years. There's hamstring injuries, soft tissue stuff. We hate to see that. There's really no one else there to catch passes. Troy Franklin has not impressed. Marvin Mims still impresses sometimes, but then doesn't get on the field. They're trading or cutting Tim Patrick. They got rid of Jerry Jeudy. There's not much here at the wide receiver position. Greg Dulcich might be the best pass catcher on the team. I know we heard some fun things about Adam Trautman and Lucas Kroll this offseason from Sean Payton. But ever since Greg Dulcich has been healthy, he has been the guy that they have all talked about. They have all talked about how nice it is to have Dulcich in the team, the fact that he is such a good guy out of the slot, you know, a great pass catcher and he can get down the field. And we've seen that in college. This guy is one of the best receiving tight ends in the NFL, I truly think, when he's healthy, is the fact that he hasn't been healthy for his first 2 years. In college at UCLA, he had really great production. 42 catches for 725 yards and 5 touchdowns. That is very impressive for a college tight end. He led his class in yards per run at the tight end position. He averaged 17.6 yards per catch over his college career.
It's insane.
It is insane for a tight end. I took a look at the last couple years. 10 tight ends have hit 17 yards per catch in the last 2 years of college football. None of them have had over 500 yards. Greg Dulcich had 725. So this guy was efficient, and he kept it up with volume. That's really hard to do. This guy is set up for success. If he's healthy, he will be successful. I don't think there's enough competition in that offense where as long as he's on the field, he is going to be successful. Now, if he's not on the field, I can't predict that. I mean, maybe I can because we've seen it before. But I think if, you know, at this price, this cheap tight end that's got the, you know, upside, let's go for it. He's a throw-in for most deals. You can get him for a third rounder. Trade Michael Mayer for him. Trade J.K. Dobbins for him. He's not expensive.
I love that. I love where your head's at. And, of course, you know, you're rebuilding. This is the time to take some chances. This is the time to take the risks because you really don't know what your team's going to look like. It's time to invest in guys like this. And that's why I'm going to buy in. Remember, could have gotten first for him at one point in time. Then they signed Tony Pollard. Tyjae Spears, 97 on Keep Trade Cut. Running back 18. Looks like he's going to be the 1B to Pollard's 1A. He's very efficient with his touches, Nate. He averaged 4.5 yards per carry, 7.4 yards per reception on 100 carries and 52 receptions. So not a guy who has a ton of, wear and tear on him. He was running back 34, and he averaged 9 fantasy points per game. So, that's as a backup who was behind a workhorse in Derrick Henry. Tony Pollard is not that. I feel like it's going to help him, Tony Pollard being there. He doesn't have to be the guy. He can still be efficient. A guy like, and I'm not saying he's the same player, everybody, Devon A-Chan, Jahmyr Gibbs, guys like that are efficient with their minimal touches. That could be Tyjae Spears. Even though his touches are going to go up, he's still going to be very efficient with them. Check this out. 6th in yards per touch last year with 5.5. 4th in juke rate, 26.3%. 5th in breakaway run rate, 7.0. And 5th in yards created per touch, 4.58. Nate, that's on 152 touches last year.
That's pretty good.
That's great. 100 carries, 453 yards, 2 touchdowns, 52 catches, 385 yards, and 1 touchdown. Let's see what he can do with Will Levis there, Treylon Burks. I think, I saw some trades late first. I feel like you might be able to get him a little bit cheaper than that. Maybe like a really high second, couple seconds, something like that. David Montgomery for Spears in a third, I saw as well. I'm interested in that. David Montgomery's not going to be around for much longer. To get younger, get some assets on top of it. You might be able to stretch that to a second if you're savvy.
Maybe you get a second, you give a third.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that if that's the case. So, Nate, that's all we got. Everybody, thank you. I want to see you in our Discord, patreon.com/Dynasty Rewind. So until next time, for Nate, I'm Mike. Thanks for listening, everybody.